Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee Live. I want to jump into a fun one today. This is going to be a part one because it's a conversation that's going to take more than a single podcast to address, and that is one of my favorite topics, propaganda. And we're going to talk about it in its relation to politics. We are in an election year, and the amount of propaganda going around on both sides, it's just absolutely incredible. This is a topic I love. I've always been a huge fan of propaganda. I think it's a very fascinating area of marketing. It's one of the most powerful forms of marketing. It's been being used for just about forever. Um, and where we see it most used is within the political arena. The ideas, the concepts of propaganda are used across all marketing, but where you still have it in its most true form tends to be in the political arena. So, being an election year gives us a unique time to look at it. Not only that, but our election is different than it's traditionally been in my lifetime, at least, due to the fact of the parties that play with Donald Trump and Joe Biden. It has not been what would be called a normal election in this country historically. Between the court cases and just the amount of vitriol on both sides, and then the constant propaganda. I think it makes for a fascinating case study of honestly American politics, society, marketing, you name it. So as I go through this, and we are going to be talking about politics, I am not going to try to be political. My political views, your political views, don't matter in the context of propaganda. Now, mind you, my political views, your political views, everyone's political views are used in the designing of and contribute to the efficacy of propaganda. But I want to look at this from um, a 50-foot view. I want to step back a little. I don't want to be getting into the politics as much as I want to be getting into the propaganda, the tactics. I want to look at both sides of this as well, both sides of the equation. And something we struggle with in our society today is discussing politics in any manner whatsoever without everyone getting hyper emotional over it. And part of that is due to the propaganda that's been going on. So I want to take an honest look at American politics and through the lens of propaganda and marketing. And we're going to kick that off. I labeled it part one because there's one with the news cycle because of the fact that we are in an election year. It's just nonstop. There's something new to talk about all the time. And so as I feel like there's interesting stuff to go back to, I'll do part two, part three, part four, who knows how many through time. But I want to kick off propaganda and politics. So the first thing, Edward Bernays wrote propaganda. It's generally considered to be his seminal work. It was originally published in 1928. It follows his 1923 work, Crystallizing Public Opinion. Crystallizing Public Opinion was Edward Bernays' book that laid out the concepts behind what makes propaganda function. Right? It was how do you crystallize public opinion? How do you get the public opinion going in one way? He released that in 1923. A lot of his writing in crystallizing public opinion came from his knowledge of his uncle's work. And his uncle was a gentleman that you may have heard of before by the name of Sigmund Freud. And what Bernays did was he took Sigmund Freud's work in psychology and applied it to effectively marketing and developed propaganda. He formalized propaganda and marketing. Propaganda, the term, comes back far before that. It actually originates, I believe, from the Catholic Church for the Office of the Propagation of the Faith, but it's a little used word, propaganda, until World War One. And then Bernays came around and wrote Criticizing Public Opinion, followed up with Propaganda. This is kind of the definitive handbook to how to do propaganda versus Criticizing Public Opinion, which was the theory of propaganda. And I just want to start with an excerpt from chapter 1, right at the very beginning of the book, after the forward. The very first thing that Bernays writes in Propaganda is chapter 1, Organizing Chaos. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. So he says the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. What does he mean by that? Well, first of all, what is the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses? Well, that's what propaganda is all about. It is getting the masses to all agree in a similar fashion as much as possible to take an action of some sort. And the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. You might go, well, wait a minute. If we're being consciously manipulated, how is that important to the how's an important element in democratic society? It's what allows us to run smoothly as a society. And he goes on to say, we are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. Well, that's kind of scary. You look at that and you say, we're being governed, where our minds are being molded, our tastes are formed by people we've never heard of, and this is a good thing? Well, yes, it is. Because, and here's where he goes, this is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. He says it's a natural occurring thing. This is the logical result of our democracy, of our society, of our country. Well, why? Because vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they're to live together as a smoothly functioning society. And that's really the big key here. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. So we are talking about the masses, not every individual. There's always going to be individuals who don't fall under the propaganda umbrella, if you will, or they try to avoid it, or they're onto it, they see it, they analyze it, they know it. Doesn't mean it doesn't affect them. Propaganda is very powerful, but it's how you keep the masses in line. And it's a natural occurrence in the way we're set up as a society, and it's necessary to live together in a smoothly functioning society. That's the argument that Bernays makes. Why is it necessary that we our minds molded and our ideas formed to live together in a smoothly functioning society? Well, there's a few reasons for that. Excuse me. One is that we have too many options as humans. We have too many options for anything and everything we ever do. Let me take a very simple example here. You go to the grocery store and you want to buy toothpaste. How many toothpaste options are available? I don't know an exact number off the top, but the point is there's shelves full of them, right? What's to prevent you from spending the rest of your life staring at the toothpaste aisle, reading every box, looking at the ingredients, the active ingredients, what's in them, what the price is, what the size is, the quantity in each one, and then making what would be the logical, rational human decision? That would be to buy the toothpaste that has the best ingredients, right, for what it is you want to achieve, for the best price, right? The best product for the best price. Well, to do that in a rational way, you'd have to read and research every single toothpaste option until you found the right one. That takes too much time. Multiply that by all the decisions we make in a general daily basis, and what we come to realize is that we can't practically live rational lives in all the decisions we have to make. We just don't have the time for it, nor do we have the patience for it, nor would it be ideal even if we did have the time and patience for it, because there's better things you could spend that time on than your selection of toothpaste. So how do we choose our toothpaste? Well, Most people are going to choose very simply, at least, to my knowledge around me, it's Colgate or Crest. Why? We've heard of them. They've propagated their brands to the point where we know them. We know with Colgate or Crest that we're getting good old-fashioned toothpaste that's been around a while, that it works. As far as which specific box we grab, that's probably going to be the individual day, our mood, how pretty the box is. We might have a favorite we grab every time, or there may be something we're interested in. We might go, ooh, I want my teeth a little whiter. We're going to grab the box that has whiteies. We're going to look for Colgate or Crest, then we're going to find the box that we want. We're going to purchase it. And that leads to a smoothly functioning society. How did we get there? Well, people like me and thousands of other ad people and marketing people have convinced people over time, have propagated the message that Colgate and Crest are good, valid, valuable, worthy toothpaste. So you can go to the store and pick one up off the shelf. And you've been manipulated into believing that. The truth is the efficacy, the bang for your buck, etc., of Colgate and Crest are probably superseded by a lot of brands out there. There's probably brands you've never heard of that have better ingredients at a better price. Unless someone propagates that message, you'll never know. So you're going to go back and you're going to buy your Colgate or your Crest, and you're going to move on with your life. That's that smoothly functioning part of society. So with propaganda, it's a necessary thing to keep things running smoothly. There's just too many decisions. So like Bernays goes on to say, our invisible governors are in many cases unaware of the identity of their fellow members in the inner cabinet. So first of all, they don't even all know who they are that are working on this. They don't always work together. They govern us by their qualities of natural leadership, ability to supply needed ideas and key positions in a social structure. Whatever attitude one chooses towards this condition, because mind you, you are being manipulated and you may not like that, but whatever your attitude towards this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons, a trifling fraction of our 120 million at the time this was written. We had about a population of 120 million in the US, who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires and which control the public mind, who harness the old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. It is not usually realized how necessary these invisible governors are to the orderly functioning of our group life. In theory, every citizen may vote for whom he pleases. Our Constitution does not envisage political parties as part of the mechanism of government, and its framers seem not to have pictured to themselves the existence in our national politics of anything like the modern political machine. But the American voters soon found that without organization and direction, their individual votes, cast perhaps for dozens of hundreds of candidates, would produce nothing but confusion. Invisible government, in the shape of rudimentary political parties, arose almost overnight. Ever since then, we have agreed, for the sake of simplicity and practicality, that party machines should narrow down the field of choice to 2 candidates, or at most 3 or 4. In theory, every citizen makes up his mind on public questions and matters of private conduct. In practice, if all men had to study for themselves the abstruse economic, political, and ethical data involved in every question, they would find it impossible to come to a conclusion without anything. We have voluntarily agreed to let an invisible government sift the data and high spot the outstanding issues so that our field of choice shall be narrowed to practical proportions. From our leaders and the media they use to reach the public, we accept the evidence in the demarcation of issues bearing upon public question from some ethical teacher, be it a minister, a favorite essayist, or merely prevailing opinion. We accept a standardized code of social conduct to which we conform most of the time. In theory, everybody buys the best and cheapest commodities offered him on the market. In practice, if everyone went around pricing and chemically tasting before purchasing the dozens of soaps or fabrics or brands of bread which are for sale, economic life would be hopelessly jammed. To avoid such confusion, society consents to have its choices narrowed to ideas and objects brought to its attention through propaganda of all kind. There's consequently a vast and continuous effort going on to capture our minds in the interests of some policy or commodity or idea. So the point is, we use propaganda to make life function smoothly in our political system. When we get to the ballot box, we have our selection, usually a Democratic and a Republican um, person that we can vote for. Occasionally, we'll have a third party in there at some point. Everyone over the age of 35 meet a number of requirements in this country is eligible to run for president. How do we end up with such a neat choice of one or two? Well, that's what our political parties do. And what are our political parties? They are the propaganda machines of politics. They are the ones whose responsibility to the American people is to sift through all the data, to sift through, to read every toothpaste box and come back and tell us what candidate is good and why, because they've read all the data. And we have Crest and Colgate here on one side, and you have people saying here's why Crest is better, and on the other side you have people saying here's why Colgate's better. We have two brands in American politics. We have Democrats and we have Republicans. Those are the two political brands in this country, and those brands each present us with a candidate to vote for in our election years. This year, that is going to be Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Those are the candidates given to us by the propaganda machines, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And those brands are presenting us with those choices. Now, the theory is they've gone through and read every box. They've looked at every ingredient. They've done every chemical test they can. They've determined the economics. They've checked their responsibility to us. What their job is as the propagandists of their party is to do all that work for us and come back and tell us what our options are to vote for. And that's what you propagate. You propagate the messages that are positive for your brand. The second way propaganda is used in politics, and in many things, it's also used to attack the other brand. The Democrats attack the Republicans attack the Democrats. Why do you attack the other brand as well? Well, you have a number of ways to build up a brand. It always has been for any brand. You can propagate its pluses, its advantages, and boost it up about how great it is. You can also tear down its competition. When you're looking at, Colgate and Crest, if Colgate can make Crest look bad, that also de facto makes Colgate look better. And so you have a double-edged sword in propaganda. You want to build your brand while tearing down your opponents. You'd be careful with those things. Propaganda is a fickle mistress. Depending on how you approach it, you can also turn people away from you. So how is propaganda being used currently in our elections? Well, first let's think about what makes propaganda. Propaganda is the messaging, it's the branding, it's the messaging, it's the influence around your product and brand. Is it true? Well, it can be. Is it guaranteed to be? No. Is it factual? It can be. Is it guaranteed to be? No. Is it right? It can be. Is it guaranteed to be? No. Truth is, propaganda is everything added to a story beyond the facts is the propaganda. The facts are facts. Very simple, right? Take this case that just occurred. The fact coming out of it was that Trump was found guilty on 34 felony counts. That's a fact. Well, what's the propaganda? Most other stuff around the case. Now, are there other facts involved? Yes, there are. One of the best ways to do propaganda is you find facts. So let's take a look at, say, the Trump case for just a moment. It's a fact that he was found guilty of 34 counts. It's also a fact that the case was beyond the statute of limitations, other than an exception due to coronavirus, which allowed Judge Beecham to extend the case by 1 year and 42 days, which then put it within the statute of limitations. That's a fact. There is a fact that the felony charges of the state felony were due to misdemeanor charges being used to cover up another crime, which was not identified or need not be identified by the witnesses. That was a fact. It's a fact that the case was held in New York City, where it's, I believe, 82% Democratic. Don't quote me on that number, but I believe it's right around there. That's a fact. It is a fact that no case like this has been brought before that this was, I hate to use this word because it's been overused and never used and now overused in the last few years, but it's unprecedented. It is a fact that we just prosecuted the 45th president of the United States for a felony crimes, and that's never been done in this country. He is one of 45 people to ever serve in the presidency, the first to be charged with a felony. That's a fact. All those are facts. What you make of them, well, that's going to be up to the individual as well as the propaganda they accept. There's lots of claims beyond the facts, and their propaganda. So what I want to do is jump us over to the news here and start taking a look at some of the propaganda that we see on a daily basis. I'm not going to call out whether it's good, bad, or otherwise, but I more just want to point it out to make people aware of it and make marketers aware as well of how the propaganda is being used, so you can think about how you can use it for your brands, because it is a very powerful thing. Okay. Not going to get into serial killers. So, okay, we're in Google News, and I just clicked on US. That is all that's been done here. Let's see what propaganda we have going. Okay, jumping into politics and propaganda. The entire Hunter Biden case, the fact that it's so public, is propaganda. Because once again, what are the facts to this case? The facts are that Hunter Biden purchased a firearm and said that he was not a drug addict when doing so. It's a fact that at the time he purchased the gun, he was, I believe, in rehab and he was not using drugs. Therefore, he could have made an argument that he was not a drug addict. It's also a fact he has a history of drug addiction. So those are the facts of the case. Now it's being tried. Now here's the thing. Hunter Biden trial live updates. Haley Biden testifies about drug addictions that rocked the Biden family. That's propaganda. At the end of the day, drug addiction rocking the Biden family. The only reason to talk about that is to damage the Biden brand. That's propaganda. Gun crime trial enters day 4 as evidence of his drug addiction mounts. That's fairly neutral. It enters day 4, evidence mounts. Haley Biden takes a stand. That's news. It's just saying what's happening. There's news and propaganda as facts versus fiction, right? Rocked the Biden family. That's propaganda. That's charged words trying to elicit a response negative against the Biden family, coming up by NBC. Jurors in the Hunter Biden trial hear more from the clerk who sold him the gun. That's news. When you get into these, there's probably lots of propaganda on both sides, but either way, just look at the headlines for a moment here. Normandy D-Day. Biden lauds World War II veterans on D-Day 80th anniversary. Vows NATO solidarity in face of something. Okay. Here we go. Framework campaign accelerates vetting of potential running mates. That's news. VP Final Four. Donald Trump seeks info from Bergen, Rubio, Vance, and Scott. Probably a combination. Shortlist. Doc request reveals top contenders. Pros and cons of the Republicans who might be Trump's VP pick. That's a propaganda article. Pros and cons. Don't know which side it's written by, but I guarantee you it's a propaganda article when you're looking at the pros and cons. Probably good propaganda. If this is being done by Trump's team, this is that job of the party to go through and read all the toothpaste boxes and figure everything out, and then come back and tell us what those things are. That is propaganda. Doesn't mean it's negative, but that's what it is. Neighbor at the center of the Justice Alito flag controversy speaks out. This is all propaganda. This is anti-Trump propaganda. When you look at it, what's the facts of this case? At Alito's house a few years ago, there was a flag flying upside down. I believe he said it was his wife who did it. I don't know too many of the details of the story, but at the end of the day, it's, he had a flag flying upside down at his house. Okay, great. The neighbor at the center of the controversy speaks out. This is a loaded word, controversy. Justice is at best mistaken. Alito's neighbor. Who the hell is Alito's neighbor, and why are we listening to them about politics that they're at best mistaken. Do you know Alito's motivations or his wife, whoever did it? I mean, I think they're the ones to speak to that. The neighbors saying that they're at best mistaken. Roasts his own outlet for passing on the flag story. A Waypo writer roasts his outlet for passing on the flag story. I think they're smart to pass on the flag story. It's a non-story. I mean, mind you, if you want to run it. But there's not too much distance you're going to get out of that one as far as changing opinion of people. Former Alito law clerk says Justice should recuse himself from the cases. Once again, this is propaganda. The law clerk says he should recuse himself from cases. Well, this is to make Alito look bad, and making Alito look bad is to make Trump look bad, and to make Trump look bad is to try to help Biden win the election. At the end of the day, everything going on in politics is one end game right now: winning the election. Everything Biden and the Democrats are putting out in the propaganda is geared towards Biden winning the election. Everything the Republicans are putting out is geared towards Trump winning the election. So when we see that former Alito law clerk says justice should recuse himself from cases, the actual piece at the end of this that the propagandists want to get to is that Biden should win the election, is what this says. Tornadoes, we're going to skip that. Flying spiders, we're going to skip that. Donald Trump tries to court pivotal 2024 voters after guilty verdict. Once again, this is propaganda. Trump's conviction is far from a slam dunk for Biden's winning swing voters. So interestingly, Trump's conviction is far from a slam dunk. Was it ever thought to be? Did anyone ever think that Trump being convicted would be a slam dunk for the Democrats to win the election? I don't think so. I mean, even before the case started, my thought was you were going to solidify his base because everyone on that side, on the right, said it's a political prosecution. This is a banana republic, right? Which, when that's the mentality, how do you think your prosecution is going to make them feel if you win it? They're going to say, well, it was rigged. And so, it was never going to be a slam dunk in the first place, right? But why are this right here is written for Democrats. Here's the deal. No Republican's going to read this and go, of course. Democrats are going to read this and say, oh man, it should have been a slam dunk for winning swing voters, but don't worry, they'll come around, right? There's nothing in here to encourage or discourage Republicans, the right. This is purely aimed at Democrats, and it's propaganda. If we jump into it, it's probably let's do it. Let's jump in a little deeper on one just for the heck of it so we can see a little more of it. The surprising result of a focus group of swing voters ought to keep Biden humble. Last week, 4 hours after Trump received his felony convictions of falsifying business records, the New York Times Republican pollster Frank Luntz conducted a focus group to understand why they're still not sure who they're going to cast their ballot for in 2024. The riveting result, it's very charged words, riveting result. That's really annoying. Thank you. The riveting result published Tuesday allows us to briefly peer into the minds of some of the most coveted but poorly understood parts of the American electorate. And while these voters' words should be humble political, these voters' words should be humble political prognosticators on both sides of the aisle, I found that a lot of the conversation was particularly concerning for Biden. That, once again, is propaganda. That's anti-Biden propaganda, pro-Trump. Interestingly, I don't even know. I don't know who the author of this is. If they are, it's Ashina Aleem. Let's see who they are. I don't know if they're pro-right or pro-left, but we can usually find out by just looking at their headlines. Surprising result. Lower Trump foolhardily attacks on their own, revealing inept RNC. Conviction makes a remarkable legal win that doesn't make it a political win. Don't confuse Trump's vague statements on Israel with dovishness. While Trump is hobnobbing with rappers facing gang-related charges. These are obviously, here's some great examples of propaganda right here. Surprising result of a focus group of swing voters ought to keep Biden humble. That's propaganda, and it's also clickbait. Laura Trump's foolhardy attacks on Larry Hogan reveal an inept RNC. Very much propaganda. propaganda, anti-Republican. Trump's conviction was a remarkable legal win. Was it? That's once again propaganda. That doesn't make it a political win. No, it does not. But what makes it a remarkable? Well, it's remarkable that the case even exists, and you could argue it's also remarkable that, and there's lots of things remarkable on both sides. One thing people tend to forget too, there are two sides to every coin. There's a flip side to every story, and there's a marketing and propaganda angle to everything. Everything can be presented from two different sides, and that's one of the easiest ways to tell propaganda. Look at it from the flip side and then look at it from the neutral. Trump's conviction was a remarkable legal win. That doesn't make it a political win. No matter what that article states, I guarantee you I can give you another headline that flips the propaganda the other direction. You ready? It could either be Trump's conviction was a terrible legal fiasco. You could use the same fact pattern to make that argument, just doing it from the other side. And then instead of that, and then you could say that makes it a political failure, and then you can go negative against the Democrats. You can also frame it neutrally. Trump's conviction was remarkable. How did this happen in America? Was it a political win? And now you have a neutral standpoint to share the sides. So the point is, everything's charged with propaganda, right? This author looks like they're mostly left-leaning. No guarantee, but it looks like it. Yet here, this language is actually, whether the author realizes it or not, is pro-Trump, because a rational person reading this, or someone, let's say on the right reading this, is going to read that and go, "Ooh, it's concerning for Biden. That's good for Trump. Maybe Biden's struggling." Anytime you use charged words, you're going to have propaganda as well. So in addition to being undecided participants, all had supported or been open to former President Donald Trump and one of his opponents, Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, at least once in the election. Swing voters tend to be less politically engaged, yada, yada, yada. Hold erratic policy views, defined by their distaste for both candidates, blah, 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 blah. Here we go. Both voters seem to believe that Biden was either somehow behind the trial or unfairly exploited him, and that made him less favorable in their view. So this, once again, comes back to propaganda. Going to the trial, the facts of it were simple. He got convicted. It was a weird circumstance. There was the statute of limitations issue. There was the location, the venue. There was the denial of the motions, yada, yada, yada. There's lots of facts involved. But when you go beyond the facts, one of the big narratives, which is a propaganda thing, is that on the right, the argument was that Biden was behind the trial or exploiting it. And of course, he's going to exploit. As far as how he's behind it, the facts were the prosecutor who came from his team, this and that. But as far as how far behind it is, I don't have any evidence of anything, nor am I going to try to make those arguments. I don't care. What I'm interested in, once again, is this. Both voters seem to believe that Biden was behind the trial or unfairly exploiting it. Why did they think that? Well, that's a story that's been propagated. The Trump verdict turns into a GOP pledge. Donald Trump's conviction was expected to sink him in the polls, but it hasn't. Fani Willis case update. 6 Trump allies she can still prosecute. Wow, what a headline. That's propaganda right there. This is left propaganda, and what it's saying is Fani Willis, and there's 6 more Trump allies that she could go after. Trump bad. Trump Georgia election case temporarily halted. I like this headline. Good job, USA Today. Very straightforward. Very little propaganda in it. Court pauses George Trump election case during appeal over status of DA Fani Willis. Same here. This one is even better because it gives you more information. Now I know why they paused it instead of this one's a little baby. Appeals court halts Trump's criminal proceedings in Georgia amid scrutiny of Fani Willis. So once again, this one now has this word scrutiny. Start talking scrutiny, you're changing people's opinions. You're not just providing facts, you're providing opinion at this point because you're talking about scrutiny. NYPD preparing to revoke Donald Trump's license to carry a gun after felony conviction in New York. Once again, propaganda. At the end, when you look at this, no matter where you stand on his convictions, if you think, yay, the rule of law holds up for everyone, or you think this is just absolutely ridiculous, banana republic, chasing your political opponents, whichever side you fall on, this is the results of the trial, and part of the reason it was carried out in the first place is to be able to feed the propaganda machine. NYPD to take action against Donald Trump following conviction. Sounds so bad, doesn't it? The president was convicted and the NYPD is going to take action. Well, what's the action they're going to take? They're going to renege on his gun license, because in the state of New York, you cannot have a gun permit if you are a convicted felon. That's been on the books forever, and now that he's been convicted of a felony in New York State, the NYPD is going to revoke his license to carry a gun. Is any of this a referendum on Trump? No. Does it have anything to do with the case? No. What are the facts of this piece right here? This piece is a felon cannot legally have a weapons permit in New York State. Trump has a weapons permit. Trump has been convicted of a felony. Trump will lose his weapons permit. Now, what's interesting about this form of propaganda is it puts that case, it's using the case, which is propaganda in and of itself, and used for lots of propaganda in and of itself, as a starting point, and then it's a next iteration, if you will. This is the power of propaganda. By holding the trial of Trump, it allowed this stream of propaganda to arise, this gun license stuff. And the fact, these headlines that the NYPD is about to take action against Donald Trump following conviction makes it sound like they're going to arrest him, right? Well, the only reason that headline's even possible is due to the trial. Why does HuffPo put out headlines like that? Well, it's propaganda. If you're scrolling the headlines, you don't read the article, this just looks negative against Trump. It's propaganda. It's swaying people against him, which makes it then pro-Biden. Trump's New York gun permit to be revoked following convictions. Biden's border crisis. Why his new executive order doesn't really matter. This is now, once again, this is propaganda on the right. Now, mind you, the facts on the border aren't exactly pretty. Immigration has been at levels just absolutely unimaginable, and there's nothing really being done about it, and we've had just very open borders. But on the propaganda side of that, Biden's border crisis, why his executive order doesn't really matter. That's Fox playing some hardcore right-wing propaganda. Biden's border crisis. First of all, that name in and of itself it's already been pre-branded. It's propaganda before you even start, right? It's the Biden border crisis. It's already charged. It's politically charged just in the name. Okay. Why his new executive order doesn't really matter. That headline is already saying that Biden is powerless. It's very pro-Trump, that there's a crisis on the border and that Biden's executive orders aren't going to do anything. Therefore, elect Trump. It's propaganda. Biden is alienating progressives yet again, but he may have no choice. I don't know how he can even possibly alienate progressives, considering he has hosted what I think could probably be factually considered one of the most progressive presidencies we've ever had. Let's once again look at some facts. The narratives in this country involve some of the most progressive issues this country's ever been faced with. Trans rights. It's a very progressive issue. Immigration is a progressive issue. Biden's been so progressive on so many things, yet they're saying he's alienating the progressives. How far do they want him to go? I mean, short of dyeing his hair and personally going out and protesting on a campus, I don't know if there's too much farther he could bend towards the progressives. I'm not quite sure where they're going with that one, and then Biden's immigration backpedal. It's a big mistake. Biden's asylum halt leaves migrants unsure and rattled. This is all right-wing propaganda. Here's another one. This is also part of the propaganda machine. Contraceptives. Biden campaign names and shames Republicans who voted to block contraception bill. Well, Roe v. Wade, the fact of this whole matter was Roe v. Wade was basically overturned in the Supreme Court, and reproductive rights were sent back to the states. That's the facts. The propaganda is that the left is pro-women, the right is anti-women. It's not true. The Supreme Court just struck down Roe v. Wade and sent it back to the states. Biden campaign names and shames Republicans who voted to block contraception. That's a very charged headline, very propaganda-filled headline. He names and shames them because there's shame involved. That headline adds shame to their political decisions right in the headline. The Republicans who voted to block contraceptives, I don't know them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did not consider it shameful. That to them, they were doing the honorable thing because they stand on the other side of the issue. And from their side of the issue, they did what's great and got a huge victory that's great for all people. Once again, it can be framed either way, and that's where the propaganda comes in. So this names and shames, this is pro-left, pro-Biden propaganda, right? Saying that the Republicans who voted to block it should be shamed or shameful. No, they shouldn't. You don't have to agree with them. That's why we have that's the whole point of our democratic republic. We elect our representatives, and then they make the choices. They make these decisions for us. If you don't like what they did, vote them out, change the law. If you want contraceptions or different reproductive rights in your state than you currently have, lobby for them, get the laws changed. That's how this country works. Change the state laws. And if you live in a state that you don't agree with the laws, well, you have three choices, as we always have in this country. Change it, bitch about it, or leave. And one of the beauties of the United States of America is we are a collection of 50 states. Our states are similar to, countries like in Europe, etc., but they're individual states, and each one has its own rights. And one of the beauties of being an American is we have the right to travel freely between the 50 states and live in the one we choose without having to jump through, super special hoops and citizenship, yada, yada. I'm not saying it's always easy or practical, yada, 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 and not that everyone could do it, but that's the founding concept, is we have the ability to move, to go where we like it, or to change it if we don't. But once again, the propaganda shames Republicans. Senate vote on right to contraception bill falls short amid Republican opposition. That's fairly balanced. Contraception access bill fails in Senate. Senator Collins sides with Democrats in vote. That's balanced. Senate Republicans block bill to protect access to contraception. Still balanced. Representative Byron Donalds was asked to clarify Jim Crow remarks. I haven't looked into that, so I don't know what he's talking about. I'm going to have to take a look into that one. And then let's see, we're jumping out of, I think that's most of the politics today and the propaganda in it. But what I wanted to point out is you have all these articles about politics, and every one of them is written with a slant. There's very, very little to zero true neutral reporting. You're either getting propaganda from the right or you're getting propaganda from the left. If you want to be smart about things, look at both sides. Like what I try to do is I try to read the news from both sides. I look at the propaganda from the left and the propaganda from the right. I try to get down to what are the facts actually, of the matter, the facts at hand. And then I try to make a rational decision as to how I feel about something. That to me makes sense. When you're just scrolling headlines, though, understand that you are just seeing propaganda after propaganda after propaganda, trying to change your opinion, how you feel about something, so that you can keep things, or to keep things running, the two sides. So coming back to the book here from Renee's, I just want to read this one more time. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must operate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. Whatever attitude one chooses toward this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in social conduct or ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons, a trifling fraction of our 120 million, who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. Every word choice, every line spoken, every news article you see, every news article you don't see, it's all propaganda. Use some critical thinking and you can see it, understand it, identify it, cut down to the issues that matter, and then start making good, rational, viable decisions in your life, no matter which side of the fence you are. At least that way, you're not going to be controlled by the few propagandists out there. That's all I got for today. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll chat tomorrow. Oh, one more thing. Tuesday, the 11th, coming up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days from now, have a special guest joining the show. Dr. Jeremy Gartner, the founder of Career Propulsion, is going to be joining me on Morning Coffee Live, and we're going to talk about how to advance your career, how to find those $500,000 jobs that you are all looking for. So just want to throw that out there. Tuesday morning, come join me, and I'm going to be chatting with Dr. Jeremy Gartner, having an interview on Morning Coffee Live. Have a wonderful day, everyone. God bless. Bye.